We never really understood the kind of people who set out on multi-day hikes, carrying heavy backpacks for days and eating nothing but dehydrated food. Until one day we became them. It didn't happen overnight, though in a way it felt like a massive shortcut, because our second ever overnight hike was the Overland Track, one of Australia's most iconic and one of the world's great tracks. The main path, skipping the side trips, is 65 kilometers or 40 miles. Every step felt alive. Alpine landscapes, jagged peaks, and views that made us forget how far we had come. In the end, captivated by the beauty, we hiked over 100 kilometers in total and barely even realized it. We met fellow trekkers from all walks of life, all sharing the same passion, and loved getting to know them along the way. The Overland is more than a trail. It's a story of mountains, of raw moments, and of a freedom we didn't know we'd lost behind our office desks. And this is our story of two accountants in the mountains. Before Australia, most of our holidays used to mean the same thing: spending time by the sea. But after moving here, the land of golden beaches and endless coastlines, we realized something surprising: that our biggest passion and calling was in fact the mountains. This love brought us to Tasmania, where we first saw Cradle Mountain and the start of the Overland Track. Even then, the views left us completely breathless. But this place had more than just beauty to offer. It was here, the place where we spotted our first snake in Australia. And of course, wombats. Those adorable, fluffy little creatures sealed the deal. We were in love with this place. Has this passion made us reckless or overly ambitious? Taking on a world-class track with only one much easier overnight hike behind us? Maybe. But the thought of trading office walls for freedom and of walking through landscapes like this made us smile. And of course we had prepared with the precision of two accountants. Every piece of hiking gear researched and every kilo accounted for. Could planning alone conquer this trail? We were ready to find out. After the flight and a few transfers, we arrived at the Cradle Mountain Visitor Center. Park pass secured and buzzing with nervous energy, we sat through the safety briefing, still blissfully unaware of what the next 6 days actually held. We had visited the start of the trek a couple of times before, and every single time we spotted wombats. And of course it happened again on day one. If you want to see these little guys in Australia, this is practically a guarantee. Everyone loves them, and we are no exception. Though sometimes you have to wonder if they actually enjoy all the attention. So we asked one of them, and he actually had quite a lot to say. We started the Overland Track. Well, technically we're gonna start it tomorrow. Today we're just heading to the cabins where we're staying overnight at the beginning of the track. We are so excited about all of this because we've literally been planning this for the last 2 years. But then COVID happened, so no travels. And finally we are actually doing this. There are a lot of people here. You might be wondering about that extra pack I was holding. We arrived late, so we used the option to stay in the nearby cabins and start properly the next morning. It meant no rush, no frantic transfers, and the huge gift of a good night's sleep before diving into the unknown. From the very first steps, the track casts its spell. All worries, deadlines, and city tasks evaporated, leaving us feeling completely carefree and calm. Since we started later, the crowds had already moved on, and we found ourselves completely alone with the mountains. That made us slow down even more. But how could you complain? Surrounded by views like this, there was no need to hurry. We've climbed almost to the highest point of today's hike. It's at about 815 meters, but to be fair, we didn't climb the whole thing, just about 250 or maybe 300 meters of it. There are probably another 50 to go, and that will be the maximum climb of the day. One of the first stops on day one is Crater Lake, and honestly, the views speak entirely for themselves. The weather was mostly in our favor during the trip, but day one delivered strong winds and heavy clouds. Yet the low mist only made the landscape feel more mystical, an atmosphere that perfectly suited the Overland Track. We had to keep moving though. It's just stunning out here. We keep stopping at every lookout for ages. It's around, let me see, it's around 5 p.m. right now, and we still have 7 kilometers to go. Somewhere ahead, behind these clouds, was Tasmania's famous peak, Cradle Mountain. It deserves a climb on its own, but we saved it for another video, especially since the fog meant there wouldn't be a view from the summit today. Maybe the more places you've seen, the harder it's to be impressed. But for us, this was absolutely spectacular. We filmed so much, so if we used an actual film, I believe it would be as long as the trek itself. For a while, we even forgot we were carrying those heavy packs, though our shoulders and backs certainly reminded us the next morning.
I don't know if the camera is able to capture this. Not sure how beautiful it will be on the screen, but in real life, this is some kind of fairy tale scenery. We've been walking around this mountain for hours. It's absolutely incredible. So, what do you think about this place?
If it doesn't stop being this beautiful, we won't make it to the hut until midnight.
Yeah, it really feels that way. So, we've got about 4 kilometers left.
And it's already 6:30 p.m.
It's 6:30 p.m. and sunset in about an hour. I think we can still make it as long as we don't stop every 100 meters. Do you think it will ever stop being this beautiful, so we can actually walk without stopping?
I really hope at some point it gets a little less beautiful.
Though, on the other hand, I kind of hope it stays just like this.
It was impossible not to stop for another shot, yet another angle. Each corner was more beautiful than the last. Finally, we pulled ourselves away from Cradle Mountain's shadow and headed straight for Waterfall Valley Hut. The light was fading fast, and we didn't want to end up our first day scrambling in the dark. We passed the emergency hut, a small reminder of the trek's wild nature, before finally arriving at Waterfall Valley around 8 p.m. It felt like deep night, and many hikers were already asleep. This was our very first time staying in a hut, so there was a funny few minutes of shame walking from room to room, trying to figure out the rules and locate an empty bunk. This whole process from booking to hut etiquette is actually pretty specific to the Overland Track, and if you want to see a dedicated video on the logistics and what to expect, let me know in the comments below. The next day started early, as it always does on the Overland. By around 7 a.m, the hut comes alive, and within just a couple of hours, one by one, everyone disappears down the trail.
Alright, I'm fully awake now, and the face isn't that sleepy now, but you can't really tell anyway with the glasses on. We are just about to head out from the hut, and everyone else is already gone. We were the last to arrive yesterday, and we're the last to leave today. But honestly, I'm glad we're the last ones. It means we get to shoot the landscapes without anyone in the background. Oh, and that's over there is Barn Bluff. We were thinking to climb it, but it's completely in clouds, so there would be nothing to see from the top. So no point to sweat. Let me just adjust the exposure a bit. Yep, here we go.
And this is Waterfall Valley Hut itself, kitchen on the left and one of the bunk rooms just here. Alternatively to staying in the hut, you can also pitch a tent on one of the platforms nearby, if you really want to be even closer to nature and wake up to those views. And if you want to see wildlife during your breakfast, this is the spot. The locals here aren't shy at all. It truly felt like the kangaroos and wallabies owned this place, and we were just the paparazzi. Which honestly is exactly how it was. We had our own quick breakfast in the almost empty hut. That actually brings up something we still wonder about. Why does everyone else race to the next hut in just a few hours, only to sit around all afternoon? Maybe we will learn their secret someday. But now, with the entire place to ourselves, we took this opportunity to do a short room tour. Now we prefer a slow rhythm, taking our time and enjoying the quiet trail.
We are walking through the forest along a wooden boardwalk. And there is quite a lot of wombat poo around here. We haven't actually seen any yet, but at least not today. Yesterday we saw one hiding in the bushes, but it was really hard to see it, so we didn't even bother filming. Hopefully we'll have a bit better luck today. There is actually a good chance of seeing one near the campsite. Maybe next someone's tent, so we'll see.
By the second day, the feeling shifted. This was no longer just a walk. It truly felt like you're completely cut off from the world. No internet, no messages, no Wi-Fi. Everything is analog. Just you, the path, and the distance to the next hut. For people used to city life, that feeling, it was unsettling and profoundly liberating. Another discovery was that about a third of day 2 was spent walking along wooden boardwalks. On the one hand, they were a lifesaver in the muddy areas, but on the other hand, they also limited where you can step, so stopping for a long break meant blocking the path, so we only paused a couple of times. I already mentioned that the Overland is 65 kilometers, but we hiked over 100. And that's thanks to the tempting side tracks. We had already skipped Cradle Mountain because of the heavy clouds, but today the sky cleared. So it was our chance to visit Lake Will, the perfect views of Barn Bluff rising dramatically above the water. Overall, today wasn't the easiest hike, but nothing could wipe the smiles from our faces. Maybe we were losing our minds, but with 5 days still ahead, let's call it the adventure mood. The side trip to Lake Will marked the halfway point to Lake Windermere Hut. After that, the track flattened out, though the ground became rockier.
Look, I'm rowing!
The surroundings were so beautiful that even if you wanted to walk quickly, it was impossible not to stop. The views simply demanded to be captured. By the time we reached the hut, sunset had painted the valley in ridiculous warmth, giving the place a cozy, almost magical glow. Yes, we were the last to arrive again, but we didn't mind. There was plenty of space, and the only real difference was the view from the window.
We've made it to Windermere hut. This is night 2, and it's actually the coolest hut we've probably seen so far. It's fairly new, and everything here just looks really neat. We're about to head out to the kitchen for dinner, but first we need to find a place to sleep.
Some rooms had endless mountain vistas, but be warned. If you adjust a pair, there is a big chance your room will be filled with a noisy group of hikers. But don't worry, the best views here weren't just outside the windows. The day started quietly. Most trekkers had already packed up and left for Pelion hut, and for good reason. Today was the longest haul of the entire trek, so everyone else had set out early. Still buzzing with the energy from day 2, we stepped onto the trail, completely unaware of the physical grind that lay ahead.
This is how low clouds look like. And somewhere there, Leah is walking and filming. So I guess I'm ruining all her shots.
The first few hours were bliss. Gentle climbs, calm weather, and kind of cool breeze that is actually perfect when you're carrying a week's worth of food. We hit a rhythm that allowed us to genuinely soak in the scenery, even under those moody gray skies. If you read about the Overlands, you'll find that most hikers just embrace inevitable and march straight through the mud and the standing water.
Today's mission is to get from here to over there, through all of this mini swamp.
We had waterproof socks, sure, but the thought of hiking 5 more days in boots permanently caked in damp mud just wasn't appealing. It definitely took us more time to navigate around those patches, but we considered that extra effort a fair trade for dry feet. Then came the absolute hardest part of the day, the forest. It wasn't the incline, it was the ground itself. Every single step meant negotiating a treacherous, tangled maze of endless routes.
Today we're doing the longest stretch between huts, 15 kilometers or maybe a bit more. And this is our first stop. We're putting on the waterproof socks because we're heading through forest like this with lots of puddles and rocks. I'm guessing after the rain, this whole thing turns into a mud pit.
It felt less like a hike and more like stepping through a desperate, enchanted forest, the kind where shortcuts are forbidden and the path is designed to slow you down. It was relentless. Just when we thought we were out, a whole new strip of routes appeared. Thankfully, the first stretch of forest eventually ended, and breaking out into open alpine terrain felt like a proper reward.
Still 9 kilometers to go, and my back is already falling off.
We stopped for a break, knowing that once we entered the next section, there would be no clear place to rest. And we learned that sometimes trotting straight through a swamp isn't the fastest at all. Pulling yourself free from knee-deep mud can take longer than simply going around. Halfway through the forest, the exhaustion really started to set in. Our lack of experience, combined with heavy pack's weight, made the endless routes and swamp avoidance feel brutal. Fatigue was playing tricks on us, and we knew one bad misstep could end the hike. It was a proper grind. What saved us was a small bundle of fur sitting quietly by the trail. This one was much darker than the others, maybe the local cold weather version. And after he froze watching us, he actually decided to walk with us for a little while. It was the perfect, absurd little cheer up we desperately needed. Tiredness was definitely pushing us to the limit, and these shots of us being ridiculous speak for themselves.
Gaga, ooh la la.
But we had one daily consolation. With every meal we ate, our packs got lighter about 0.5 kilo a day. which really starts to add up. Finally, after all the mud, the roots and the aching shoulders, Pelion Hut came into sight. This was a place to finally rest, meet familiar faces, and share the day's painful but funny stories over dinner. Pelion Hut turned out to be one of the older, unrenovated shelters on the track. But after the route maze of day 3, it was spacious, warm, and frankly felt like a 5-star hotel. Okay, maybe 3. We knew this was a short day, so we decided to take a little luxury, sleep in, relax, and fully enjoy the quiet morning before setting out. Today's hike started easily. The forest section was mercifully short, a gentle climb that lifted us higher, bringing us face to face with the true high country and putting us right below Mount Ossa, Tasmania's highest peak.
Yeah, the pain goes something like this. You spend half a day climbing up, then back down, then the next day you do the whole thing again. And 6 days like this. Highly recommended.
From here 2 major treks begin, Mount Ossa and Pelion East. We knew Pelion East was shorter, only a couple of hours, so we decided to tackle it first after dropping our main packs at the junction. Hiking with just our day gear made the 300-meter vertical climb feel almost weightless. It wasn't restful, but it was definitely fun, and the view near the summit was worth every single step.
Almost there. Just about to get to the top.
Pelion East rising ahead of us, majestic and utterly untouchable. But up here, the view wasn't the only thing demanding our attention. We used our satellite communicator to check the long-range forecast. The news were not optimistic. Storms were barreling towards the Acropolis and the Labyrinth, right where we planned to be in a few days. So this required a mid-hike pivot. We made the tough but sensible decision to skip the Pine Valley side trip, stay 2 nights at Kia Ora, and tackle Mount Ossa the next morning while the weather was still holding. It was a calculated choice that would later save us a serious headache. We heard from hikers who braved the area. The fog was so thick and the rain was so heavy, they nearly lost their way back. Was it an adventure? Yes, but the one we didn't regret missing. With our plan simplified, we moved on to Kia Ora hut.
That mountain actually looks like a house with a chimney.
Since the overland rules require you to carry a tent in case of emergency, but the warmth of the huts make you lazy, we decided to use our first night at Kia Ora to finally practice pitching our gear. Arriving relatively early gave us the luxury of time to set it up, confirming that even unused gear still plays a vital role in preparedness. Our night in the tent was surprisingly comfortable. No stranger snores, no rustling from early birds, just us wrapped in silence, though outside the sleeping bag the air beat with morning chill. That quiet seclusion was priceless.
Moving the sleeping bags from the tent into the hut, we're sleeping inside tonight.
Almost like a habit, we had the entire hut to ourselves after breakfast. One thing you will find in every hut, besides the bunk beds and surprisingly lovely views from every window, is the hut journal. It is filled with stories, sketches and little moments left behind by fellow trekkers, each one its own small adventure. But what made this hut special was that some of those stories had made it onto the walls, becoming part of the place. As there was no one around in a few kilometers in any direction, I braved a dip in a river nearby. It was bone-numbingly cold, almost painful, but after 4 days without a proper shower, it was refreshing beyond words. As we set off for Mount Ossa, we started passing other hikers, some skipping the climb entirely, others already charging back down, having started before dawn. But true to our own pace, we chose to savor the last patch of good weather and take Ossa on our own terms. The first section felt much like Pelion East, offering views that opened up the entire valley, with Pelion East and Kia Ora hut far below us. What struck us here was how different the landscape felt. It looked much greener somehow, softer, with a quiet beauty all of its own. the climb dramatically steepened. The path dissolved into a field of massive boulders. We were not walking anymore, we were scrambling, hauling ourselves up huge rocks, step by painful step. The higher we climbed, the narrower path became, until it seemed to disappear into the landscape entirely. And that wasn't even the worst of it. The wind up here was relentless, hammering us from the exposed peak. But every breathless scramble was worth it for the feeling, the pure, exhilarating emotion you feel when you stand on the very top. At last, we stood on the summit of Mount Ossa, Tasmania's highest peak. We even caught the faintest ghost of a mobile signal up here, enough to read the backlog of messages, but definitely not enough to send a reply. So we stuck to the satellite communicator and sent greetings to our friends directly from the highest point in Tasmania. The descent was slow, not because it was hard, but because we kept stopping to soak in the views. Naturally, we had to stop for a late lunch at a spot like this. The entire round trip, including the climb and our late start, ate up most of the day. By the time we rushed back to Kia Ora to move our gear from tent to hut, our tent was gone. In its place was a large private trekking group. Turns out, we had accidentally set up our tent on their reserved platform.
So last night we camped at a group campsite, which you are not supposed to use unless you are part of a group and you have a booking. We didn't know that. And last night there was no one there. We just came back from the hike and there is a big group there. And our tent is gone. They had packed up all of our stuff and moved it all for us. They said it was fine, but still, I guess it wasn't the easiest job. We spent like an hour setting up that tent yesterday, so we've definitely added some extra work for them. And of course we apologized a lot, for a really long time. It was quite the situation.
They said they had time and it was no big deal.
Yeah, they said that, but I'm pretty sure they were cursing us out the entire time they were repacking our stuff.
So their incredibly kind guides had carefully moved our tent to another side. We were mortified, but they were totally understanding. So, lesson learned. Double check your tent platform. even if you think the area is empty. As forecasted, the morning started with heavy rain. But knowing it would clear after lunch, we adopted a better strategy. Coffee in the hut's kitchen, watching the truly dedicated souls, or maybe simply less patient, march off into the downpour. We waited until the downpour eased, then set off truly waterproofed. Of course, you can't control the weather, but this rain, while inconvenient, felt like a blessing. Today was the waterfall country, and the heavy rain dramatically amplified their power. We passed several waterfalls that day. The water was roaring, crashing and thundering, a powerful, beautiful and slightly terrifying experience, especially when you're standing right next to the cascade, practically within arm's reach. By mid-afternoon, the fatigue caught up. With an early transfer scheduled and 9 kilometers still to go tomorrow, we finally had to abandon our relaxed pace. The focus shifted entirely, less filming and fewer pauses. Just quick steps through the forest, pushing us towards the final, long-awaited destination, Windy Ridge, also known as Bert Nichols' hut. With the rain that day, this was probably the coldest hut on the trek, and the most compact, with bunks tucked in closer than anywhere else. The wet gear, draped over every available surface, didn't exactly make it cozy, but we didn't mind all that much. We were already thinking about the next day and the final stretch of our journey. Day 7. The last leg and finally our earliest start yet. I can proudly say we were among the very first to emerge from the hut, joining the true early birds as dawn was just breaking. The path was quiet and almost empty. Since our transfer was arranged with a private group, we had a pace to maintain. The final kilometers flew by. Before we knew it, we already reached the last hut, the official end of the Overland Track and the return to civilization. The emotions were powerfully mixed. There was a deep sadness that this beautiful, sometimes crazy adventure was over, but also the genuine awe that we had walked over 100 kilometers in a single week, completing our first true multi-day trek.
We did it.
That final relief was quickly eclipsed by the memory of the experience itself. The pain in our shoulders and legs from the daily mileage was a small price to pay for it, because ultimately the Overland story changed us. It changed our idea of what we were capable of, confirmed that sometimes the mountains are better than the sea, and proved that a couple of accountants can indeed survive and thrive in the wilderness. And we did it. And yes, we will do it all again, and we will see you on the next adventure.
You want me to video now?
It's already on,
that's fine.
so just
Oh, it's going, right?